Hi, everybody. Welcome to the giant cave of mystery. Long time no see, everybody. How are you? It's Bill Little back with the Stratosphere Lounge. I think it's 25. It may not be. It's 24, 25. I think it's something like that. That's almost unbelievable. And here we are, live from beautiful downtown Sherman Oaks, California. The Stratosphere Lounge is back after an absence of, 4 weeks. Maybe it was 5. I can't tell you how much it bothered me to have to miss all those weeks. But honestly, the amount of stuff that we had to get in place to do this virtual presidency thing is just incredible. I had to start whole new corporations. There's a fair amount of fundraising that was done. There was a new website to put up. My speaking engagements ever since the Horowitz thing have just gone through the roof, so I've been out of town virtually every week. Washington's always given away something. I was in Washington last week, and I got a stomach virus, so that didn't help any. So we'll talk about all that stuff tonight, all the stuff we've been doing in the absence, but it pained me enormously to be away from you fine people and to do this show, because I love doing this show. And by the way, this virtual presidency thing is just gigantic, and it is actually a 2-year project, and so we're just getting rolling on that. We got some questions about the virtual presidency, talk about all that stuff too. But it's just really, really good to be back and see all you guys. So we got 4 bars. That will probably last for the length of time for me to finish this sentence. So far, so good. And let's get going, because we got a lot of questions we want to cover tonight. Kim Murphy wants to know, what's been your reaction to the virtual State of the Union address? And Will Kreitner wants to know, where's the virtual State of the Union? I guess they meant what's been the reaction to the virtual inauguration. So let's talk a little bit about that virtual presidency launch and where we're going and what we're doing and all this other stuff. My reaction to the virtual inaugural was it was an awful lot of work, and in retrospect, I think it was probably more work than it should have done. Should have gotten out there sooner. And I also wanted to keep it more or less on the same length as Obama, which was 19 minutes, and that's insanely long for a video. I would like to have seen by a few more people, but my attitude on the inaugural was, the inaugural is something that's going to live on the website forever, and so it will be something that, as this thing starts to develop momentum over time, it'd be something you could always go back and watch. And I think I was probably a little disappointed only in the sense that the first thing out of the gate was something that really had to be kind of lofty. Inauguration speeches kind of set the tone, and you don't want to get in there and do your inaugural. The presidential inaugural shouldn't be particularly nasty or partisan. But after I did it, and after I had it up there and watched it, it made me realize that what we did with that Horowitz speech that so many people saw, that was such a big part of this. The nice thing about Stratosphere Lounge is I get to just talk plainly and not have to sugarcoat anything. Basically, what the virtual presidency will be and it should be just punching the real president in the throat. It's just got to be this kind of absolutely sort of real strong alpha declarative opposition to the actual president. And I said to the people who helped finance this thing, and I've said a couple times, I think, to people on Facebook, that the single great problem with the virtual presidency project was the first 2 things we had to do were the hardest 2 things that we had to do, and they were also the farthest away from where the real power of it is. The inaugural was very, very difficult thing to do technically. We had to take the existing, just so you know, I had to take the existing inaugural footage, which was shot on a telephoto lens. So there was a lot of camera shake in there. We had to image stabilize out the camera shake. We had to get those parts where the people behind me on the stage were applauding. We had to back time those things into the speech. I gave the actual inaugural speech I gave out at Redlands, California, in front of about 200 people. There was a speaking event I was scheduled to do, and we put up a Facebook page that brought another 100 people out there. So all of the applause lines in the virtual inaugural are actual applause lines from actual people. There's no way I could fake that, and that's why I wanted to do it in front of live people. So we did the speech live in front of 200 people against a green screen, And then whenever people would start applauding in the in the uh, in the room, in this little room, Little American Legion Hall, we would use that applause as a cue, and then we'd put the crowd roar behind that and so on. But back to the technical issues, just because they might be of interest to some people, I'd certainly like to explain why it took so long to get that thing done. The background footage of the inaugural platform with Obama against the stairs was on a telephoto lens, and it was shaking. It was constantly moving. And needless to say, I'm not constantly moving. So the first thing we had to do was you had to image stabilize out that stuff. That's something that can be done with computers, and basically got that background plate more or less stable. Then we had to get a guy with Photoshop to take the stairs and Photoshop the stairs. So what we literally did was we took the actual image of Barack Obama speaking on the stairs with the guy off to the side here, and then we put in front of that layer, we put a Photoshop layer of just the stairs, because you couldn't put me over Obama because he's moving around too much. So now we basically blocked out Obama, but we've still got the little pieces of video on the right-hand side of the people clapping and the guy folding his newspaper that made it look like it was live video and not just an insert. So then we had those elements. Then we had to, in Photoshop, create the little glass fence and the microphones and that stuff, the podium. And that went in front. So we had the background plate, then me, and then the foreground elements. Then what we had to do was we had to put kind of a noise over all of that stuff. I learned how to do this a while ago. I did it in the Dowd Conundrum, where I put myself on the bridge of the Enterprise. If you put noise over the foreground and the background and then blur the noise, it tends to soften that difference between me and the background, tends to make it a little more organic. So after I had the stabilized background plate and then the green screen of me in front of it, and then the foreground elements of the fence, the glass and the microphone, then we had to put noise over all those different layers, blur the noise, and then we had to go in and add camera shake. We had to actually go in and reshake the camera, because now the background guy's shaking, foreground guy's shaking, the microphone's shaking, everything's shaking. It was an awful lot of work, took an awful lot of time. I would have had the virtual State of the Union up last week if I hadn't had to go to Washington and that stomach virus knocked me out for about 3 days. But it's finished. I've got it right here on the computer. I'm going to release it later on tonight. Same thing. I have to go through and do a pass, then blur, put noise over both the foreground and the background. So when you put a little speckle, very small little noise speckle over those videos, what it does is it tends to smooth out the difference between me and the foreground that's being keyed in, and then the background. And a little blur softens it up, kind of makes everything look like it's in the same environment. But the fact is, the virtual State of the Union is far, far simpler to do than the inaugural. It's far shorter. We never, ever intended to do the whole inaugural, so we ended up shooting 2 different segments for the State of the Union. The first segment we did was guns, and that's what we're going to release tonight. Guns, don't release a stomach virus over the internet. There's enough viruses out there. Thank you very much, Dan. The gun segment is much better. It's much more forceful. It's much stronger. It's about 6.5 minutes. It's not 19 minutes. And it's basically standing up there in front of the Congress and telling, well, first half of it, you make the case, your little statistics, and you make the case about predators and prey. But the second half of the State of the Union is basically just me screaming at not screaming, but indicting the Congress, basically saying you took an oath of office to defend the Constitution, the whole Constitution, and not just the parts of it that you happen to like. So even when you introduce legislation to erode the Bill of Rights by infringing on people's rights to keep and bear arms, a violation of your oath of office, and if you don't like it, go out and take out the 28th Amendment, saying we hereby repeal the Second Amendment. Then you'll finally have some legal authority to do what you've been trying to do anyway. So I get a little more fired up in that in the State of the Union guns, which is good news for everybody. And the second segment we decided to do as a State of the Union thing was based on Obama's calling out that poll worker at the end. I personalized the gun thing and I personalized the poll worker thing. So I decided the second thing we'd pull for State of the Union is this. I wanted to talk about voter fraud. I don't want to give away all this stuff for you, but that's a nice thing about Stratosphere Lounge. We get to cheat for our friends, right? So what what we did for voter fraud was, you probably remember in the State of the Union, those of you that could bear to watch it, at the very end, he had they always do this. They love to personalize things. There was a 102-year-old lady who was, been a poll worker forever, and she's registered all these people to vote. So in my State of the Union, I'd say, and the tone changes from the guns. The guns are very serious. And in the State of the Union on voter fraud, I say, and now I'd like to tell you the story of Meloise Richardson. And Meloise Richardson's been a poll worker for 25 years now, and she's registered literally thousands of people to vote. And we'll do a reversal of the Senate, the House applauding. And then I basically say, let me tell you how much voting means to Meloise Richardson, because this is a true story. I covered it on a trifecta, I think. Meloise Richardson, who's been a poll worker for 25 years, voted, and her absentee ballot, she voted absentee ballot, voted early. So her absentee ballot was recorded on November 1st of 2012. And then on Election Day, because she enjoys voting so much and understands it's so important to the democracy, Meloise Richardson went out and voted again. And as it turns out, her love of voting Democrat is so overwhelming that she not only voted for herself twice, but she also voted 3 other times. She voted for 3 other people in her neighborhood. So that's 5 votes that she cast, actually 6, because Meloise Richardson voted for her daughter as well, submitted her daughter's absentee ballot, and then Meloise Richardson's daughter, India, went in and voted on Election Day as well, just like Grandma taught her to do. So that's 6 votes. And basically, it's a fun way to turn that, oh, look at that wonderful poll worker around. And then I basically just get into the voter fraud issue and basically say, voter fraud is voter suppression. We'll make that case. You get to see that. I'll probably release that as soon as I get back. I've got a speaking engagement in Colorado Springs, and I come back on Sunday. So we should have Guns Up tonight, and we'll have voter fraud up by Monday or Tuesday. So that'll be nice. Anyway, so that's the story on the virtual State of the Union and the virtual presidency. I'm going to move tonight because I got a lot of questions. There's so much built up debt to you people. So let's see if we can catch as many as we possibly can tonight. Anthony Cazillo wants to know, how much of society's problems can we attribute to fatherlessness? I really like that question because, all of them. Really, mostly all of, certainly the crime issues you can attribute to fatherlessness. They say this guy, I'll never mention his name, but they say the guy who shot up that school in Newtown was really distraught over his parents getting divorced. And that the 2 kids that did it at Columbine were reckless loners. The guy who shot up Aurora is another lonely, basically fatherless boy, have no direction. One thing that I had a feeling this was important. I had no idea it was this important. I've heard some statistics that basically say that that of all of the one thing that violent criminals have in common, that the single great coefficient of causality, or of correlation anyway, I guess, is 85% of the violent criminals in this country have no fathers. That way surpasses any kind of racial, class, educational, intelligence kind of correlation. They're all fatherless boys. They're all predators. That's kind of where I went with the gun thing in the State of the Union. We've got predators in the society and prey, and one of the few species that preys on itself. So our problem is that our predators look like we do. I had a line in there that I ended up cutting, but if there were 8,500 murders a year being committed by reptilian aliens with ray guns, would our answer be to disarm the population, or would the answer be to make sure that every single citizen had mandatory firearm training and a concealed weapon until this alien invasion had been exterminated and people were free to walk the streets again? So yeah, fatherlessness is everything. Fatherlessness is certainly responsible for all of these violent crimes. You have to understand that young males of any species are filled with testosterone. It's a very aggressive hormone. It's supposed to be aggressive, and when it's channeled correctly, it's essential. That's the only reason we have a population anyway. somebody has to run out there and kill the leopard, or run out there and bring down the mammoth, or run out there and do something about the people with the, one eyebrow who live up in the mountains, who come down every now and then to rape, pillage, and murder. So yeah, it's the whole problem, I think, and so much of this is hard to say, because there's nothing harder than being a single mom out there. I know a couple of single moms very well, and it's overwhelming. I don't know how they do it. I just don't know how they do it. And when you hear this, a lot of people think that by saying that fatherlessness is a major problem with violent criminals, a lot of single moms hear that and they think, well, my boy's not a problem, and I'm not really accusing your boy of being a problem. On the contrary, I know you're working very hard. I know it's very difficult. That's not to say that all fatherless boys are murderers, but it is to say that virtually all murderers are fatherless boys. And one of the things that society has been trying to wash out of it through the feminist movement and liberalism in general is this entire idea. Because here's really what it comes down to. Their vision of people is that we are automatons who are determined by our environment. Whatever we see or hear, or whatever influence, guns are just waiting to be picked up and fired, and it's not his fault because he had a bad childhood. The sad thing is, of course, they're right about that. You look at, you're right about guys like, Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer. Almost all of these guys had horrific childhoods. It was almost inconceivable they could turn out any other way. But you can't, that doesn't excuse their actions. There's lots and lots of people out there who have terrifically bad childhoods who don't turn out that way. And whether or not their childhood did it to them or not, there comes a point where, unless you are clinically insane, when somebody is begging for their life, first of all, it's very difficult for most of us to imagine ever putting somebody into that position. But when somebody is begging for their life, and you decide to take it, then you've made a decision, and that decision is something you're going to have to bear the consequences of. And the entire reason we talk about fatherless boys is it's the job of men to turn males into men. It's the job of men to use strength and authority, and mostly, far more importantly than anything, example, to channel into young men restraint and discipline, and to channel these aggressive instincts, which can be used for tremendous harm, really, not just for tremendous harm, for all the harm there is. And pretty much virtually all of the harm there is caused by, unchanneled male aggression. So that's what dads have to do. And that's what good dads do. And we don't have as many good dads as we used to, because society now has determined that the government's going to be our dad. One of the reasons that crime is so rampant in the poorest inner city neighborhoods is because in the poorest, and not just inner city neighborhoods, it's very high in certain rural neighborhoods too. The reason that crime is so high is because the government has decided that it will care for single moms, not only care for them, subsidize them. And by subsidizing them, whatever you subsidize, you get more of. So if the government basically says we'll give you $200 a month if you've got one baby, and we'll give you $400 a month if you have two, then what you end up with is lots and lots and lots of single moms who have lots and lots of kids, and the kids are often, a woman will have 5 or 6 children and 5 or 6 different fathers. And likewise, some of these young males will have 5 or 6 children by 5 or 6 different mothers. And there's no one there to raise these kids. And so the environment becomes more and more toxic every year, becomes more and more violent every year. And the children that are raised in this environment become more and more hopeless and more abandoned every year. And that's what dependency has done to people. That's what the government has done with the best of intentions. No one ever, look, I hate this government. I hate this dependency culture. I hate it as much as anybody in this world. But the majority of the people that put this in place thought, my God, this woman's single and she can't raise her kid. We got to help her. So we started helping her, and then we started to realize that By the way, the very first of these relief programs, aid to dependent children, the people who put those programs in place were mortified at the idea that that money would go to unmarried moms. They were mortified. It was primarily, when it was initially introduced, aid for dependent children, aid for dependent families, I forget what it was called. The idea was that, there were a lot of widows from the war, and there were a lot of people who died, and those people needed to be taken care of. But when you ask the people that put these programs in place whether or not single moms should get this out of wedlock, they were mortified. They said, my God, if we do this, then women will just have all these children and they'll expect us to pay for them. And that's what happened. This is kind of the great tragedy of all of this, isn't there, really? Because all of this stuff is driven by good intentions, and the problem with liberals is they're unwilling to accept the fact that the world doesn't turn out the way they wish it would. That's number one, that wishes are not reality, and just wanting something doesn't mean it's going to come true. And the second thing that's wrong with liberals is they refuse to accept responsibility for their policies. I'll grant them a pass. It's not true in all cases, because in some cases, certainly cases of LBJ, this was done intentionally to harvest votes. But the vast majority of people who were behind these programs thought they were doing something good and compassionate. And the problem with liberals is they don't accept the responsibility for this. I'm ready to say you thought it was going to work out better and it didn't. Okay. But it didn't. And now we have to do something about it. So I could spend the whole night talking about this, but hopefully that at least gets to the bottom of it, Anthony. Moving on, Joe A. Kunzler wants to know, how can we save the U.S. Navy Blue Angels and stop sequestration? I can never get that word. And now you could say sequestration. And Brooke Litton Fairbanks also wants to know, please explain your views that sequestration is a good thing. I want to see the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds keep flying, and let's start this talk about sequestration by saying that when people don't want to have their budgets cut, the first thing they do is hold up the things that people want to see the most. That's why whenever we talk about having to raise taxes yet again on the local level, again and again and again and again and again, whenever we talk about raising taxes on the local level, we always hear about the fact, well, if we don't, and since it looks like we're not going to, we're obviously going to have to cut the police department, we're going to have to cut the fire department, and we're going to hire fewer teachers. No one ever says, well, we didn't get the money we want, so in order to keep the teachers and the firemen, we're going to have to cut our retirement benefits or the salaries or the pay for sequestration. Yes, thank you, Dave. We're never going to have to cut the salaries of the administrators. We're never going to have to cut back on the retirement plan for the assistant deputy director to the management of the water district. It's always a question of, no, we've got to cut police, we've got to cut teachers, and so now we have to cut the Blue Angels, and the aircraft carriers aren't going to sail because they have no fuel. We never talk about how top-heavy the Pentagon may be. We never talk about other things that could be cut. We certainly never talk about entitlements that are the great majority of the government. We would not have a single penny of deficit if our taxes today paid just for the government. If you took defense, Department of Education, everything, parks, every building, every single thing that the government pays for, everything you think you buy when you get taxed for your government, we actually could lower the tax rate and still pay for that and not have any deficits at all. The reason we are so deep in debt is because of these entitlement programs. That's what's got to be cut. So I want to keep the Blue Angels flying too. But what I would do is I would, and you'll hear this eventually from the virtual presidency, is I will say this year, we are not going to increase our spending at all. We're going to spend what we spent last year. Next year, we're going to cut the budget by 5%, all across the board. We're not going to pick favorites. We're just going to cut it across the board. We're going to cut it 5% across the board. And we're going to let the agencies determine what 5% they want to cut, because we're hoping that they'll cut the fat. But we will also, thank you very much, everybody. I do appreciate it. There's 19 different people commented that it's sequestration. Thank you. But here's what we'll do. We will say 5%. This year we're going to spend the same spent last year. Next year we're going to have 5% budget cuts. And we are going to review the budget cuts. And we are hoping that these agencies are going to start to cut the fat and the waste out of their budgets and their travel expenses and all of this stuff so they can't have their parties in Vegas. However, If we find through an independent, and when I say an independent audit, I don't even mean an independent government audit. I mean, as virtual president of the United States, I'm going to hire 2 or 3 leading accounting firms to go through the budget as if they would go through any other budget. And I'm going to have them do it independently, and then we'll compare their notes. And if it turns out that these federal agencies are cutting vital services in order to protect salaries and benefits for people that don't really do much of anything, then I am going to call that agency out by name, and I am going to tell them, you are going to redo this budget until you start cutting the fat and the waste. And I'm going to cut the budget 5% every year for the next 4 years. If you did that, see, this way you don't have to get into the who wins and who loses. Oh, how dare you cut this program? How dare you cut that program? The president likes this, but he doesn't. No, we're going to cut it all 5% across the board. That's it. That's what we're going to do. And yeah, D-Web says, what's a budget? Exactly. And I've said this several times on various shows I do, but it took me 4 years to understand why they don't have a budget. The reason that that the Senate hasn't passed a budget in almost 4 years is because if you don't have a budget, there's no way to know how much you are over budget. If you ever wondered why they don't pass a budget, now you know. So anyway, look, sequestration basically is the credit card company saying your credit card limit has been reached. Your credit is no longer good, and now you're going to start making payments. They're making this into a hair on fire kind of thing where, oh my God, here's the worst thing that would happen. But that won't happen. And even if it did happen, it's time. Is there nobody in Congress with the name Republican? I mean, didn't the Republicans come out and say sequestration was awful, and all of a sudden here comes John Boehner saying it's a catastrophe. Why is it a catastrophe? It's a limit. We've had something called the debt limit, which you've exceeded. That's why we have sequestration, because sequestration is apparently an actual limit. It's not just it's not just the debt ceiling. Every time we talk about raising the debt ceiling, you might want to pass this on to your liberal friends. Every time we talk, well, we just raised the debt ceiling. Think about the debt ceiling as if it were a speed limit. Let's say that you live in a residential neighborhood and your speed limit is 30 miles an hour. Here's what would happen to your speed limit if we treated that limit the way we treated the debt ceiling, which is also supposed to be a limit. Your speed limit at in your neighborhood is 30 miles an hour, but all of a sudden you go out there and you see people doing 32, 33 miles an hour routinely with a radar gun, and the policeman with a radar gun sees everybody doing 35 miles an hour. And instead of pulling them over and writing them a ticket for speeding, what they do is they say, well, everybody on the street's doing 35, so we'll make the speed limit 35. Then everybody starts doing 40 miles an hour, 42, 45, and after a few years, people say, you know what, nobody's really doing the 35 mile an hour speed limit, let's raise it to 45. And then people start doing 50 and 60 miles an hour down your street, and you realize everybody's doing 60, so let's make the speed limit 60. Then they're doing 80 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour down the street. And instead of writing tickets and saying you can't go any faster than this, we just keep raising the speed limit. Eventually, there's going to be somebody who's going to drag a nitro-burning funny car down to the bottom end of Elm Street someplace in a residential neighborhood, and they're going to burn rubber down that street, and they're going to do 190 miles an hour on the quarter mile. And then the speed limit will be 190 miles an hour, and that's what's going to happen to your neighborhood. Because if you don't have a limit, it's not a limit. If every single time you hit the limit, instead of penalizing people, you raise the limit, it's not a limit. So sequestration is awesome. I say go for it. The problem is no one, especially John Boehner, and nobody else apparently, knows how to defend this stuff. But I do. And you do too. So we're going to get out in front of these things and start making these kind of arguments. That's why we want to get out there and do all this stuff. And it looks like, by the way, I know I've been very busy lately, and there have been some very big things in motion for me since the David Horowitz speech, and a lot of stuff I can't talk about right now, but a real chance for me to get this kind of argument out there in front of the people that it'll really affect, and not just through videos either. A chance to really work in the political arenas. I can't tell you much more than that, but things are looking good for yours truly and your humble author. All right, so moving along. Julian G writes, Bill, everything I see here and find makes me believe that my generation, I'm 24, is one that believes there should be no consequence, accountability, or room for criticism. Even the slightest disagreement to a view is seen as hate, and no one should be able to think different than what is the hive mind. With my spoiled and decadent generation seeming so far gone, should we just abandon these grown children and put our hope in a free future in the next generation? Well, first of all, Julian, anybody who can write a letter, an email like that means the generation's not gone. Anybody who has that attitude is a good person, and you're obviously a good person. And the one thing we lose track of in the middle of all this wailing and gnashing of teeth is just how many good people there are out there. I think we're getting outnumbered, but we've always been outnumbered. The great thing about the truth is that the truth is an enormously powerful lever. You can't put darkness into a room. A little bit of light in a room chases out all the darkness. So let's talk about this issue about generations. I've been talking about parallel structures because things like homeschooling is a chance to get away from all of this indoctrination and so on and so on and so on. But what I would say politically is this. I do think that the people who are in their mid to late 20s by now, early 30s, have been so indoctrinated for so long that they vote for Obama for reasons they don't even understand. I do think there's an enormous opportunity to start moving it at the 14, 15, 16-year-olds who are going to be old enough to vote next election. And the way I would do that is I would talk about, I don't have time to reopen it here. I talked about it in A New Beginning on election night. But basically, the short form is we have a industrial age government trying to govern an information age economy, and that will not survive. There's no way it can survive. It is going to fail no matter who's in charge of it, Republican or Democrat. This giant bloated government's going to collapse. If for no other reason, then we can't afford it. The richest country in the history of the world cannot afford this government. This government costs more than the GDP of China, which is a communist state. So it's going to collapse. And I don't think it necessarily means it's going to collapse to the point where we're going to be sitting around burning tires, eating rats on spits. But it's not going to continue. This just not. So the question is, what comes next? And what I think comes next is we have to make the case for a government that is as tiny as it possibly can be, essentially a government that paves the roads, runs the Federal Aviation Administration, defends the country, and does very little else on the federal level. And the way you make this case is by saying that if you do it differently, if you build a parallel structure, you'll get it faster, better, and cheaper. Most of you have heard that old saw, older people have anyway. You go to a car dealership, like a repair shop or something. Occasionally you'll see this on the wall. You'll say you can have it fast, you can have it cheap, and you can have it good. Pick any two. You can have it fast and good but not cheap. You can have it fast and cheap but not good. You can have it good and fast but not cheap. But independently searching for the best deal on anything compared to the way the government works, because the government's just so horrifically inefficient, means that you can do it faster and better and cheaper, all three. It's a trifecta. So, for example, homeschooling is a better example of a parallel structure for education. If you don't like the LA Unified School District's indoctrination, homeschool your kids. It's getting easier because of this information age. We have a lot of online teaching aids now and should have the ability to network so that you don't have to teach every single day all the classes. You should be able to teach one class. Mrs. Johnson should be able to teach another. By the way, just since this is a point I want to hammer repeatedly, the great missing link, in my opinion, in the homeschool business right now, the great single untapped resource in America today, is our retired population. There are millions, tens of millions of people who have lifetimes of experience, who are very patriotic, very hardworking, who've had 40, 50 years in engineering and mathematics and science and so on, and they sit there with nothing to do. I don't know a single happy retired person. I know, well, that's not true. I know a couple. But most of them are very lonely and very sad. No one wants them to go back to work 40 hours a week. They've done their time. They're entitled to their retirement. But I'll bet you anything, man, if you found a way just in your local neighborhood as a homeschooler to get in touch with other homeschoolers and basically knock on some doors electronically or physically and find out that the guy who lives down in apartment 4D is a aerospace engineer who's been retired for a while. And if you asked him if he would like to come and teach some math or some science or some engineering classes, 2 hours a week for your high school kids who have self-selected to be there, I think he'd leap at it. I think he'd pay you. So that's a parallel structure of a better way to get an education than the government provides. I think, frankly, I don't know if it's against the law or not, but if you live on a little cul-de-sac or something and you're tired of your street being full of potholes, I think you should be able to basically get together with everybody else on the street, just knock on doors and say, hey, listen, we're tired of waiting for this. It's going to take us 6 years before they pave the street, and when they do it, they're not going to do it well, and it's going to take forever. They're going to take, they've been working on the 405 freeway for 4 or 5 years now. And you drive down the 405 freeway, it's a 5, 6, 7, 8, no, who am I kidding? It's a 10-mile stretch that they're working on. And you will see 1 or 2 trucks working on a section of 200 or 300 yards of this 10-mile thing. And, all the lanes are constricted and everybody's backed up in traffic. It's taken 5 years because they want the union jobs to last forever. So if you want your street paved, right, your little corner cul-de-sac, why don't you get together with your neighbors, find out what it would cost from a construction company, get them to make you a deal, and pitch in and do it. You get it faster, better, and cheaper. Now, the problem is, of course, you're already paying taxes to pay that street. This is extra pay. Oh, it is illegal? You get fined a lot? That doesn't surprise me, Kelly. But anyway, you get the idea, right? These are the kind of laws that we have to make it unillegal. We have to make it legal then. We basically have to start saying that people should have a right to be able to do these kind of things on their own, and privatize as much of society as we can, and basically get out there and do as many things as we possibly can for ourselves. Because the beautiful thing about parallel structures is, Julian, that you don't have to give up on people. They're filled with despair and lethargy and so on because that's all they know. But if you put something bright and shiny next to something that's dull and nasty, people will go to the bright, shiny thing. If homeschooled kids get better scores, are happier people, then other people's parents realize that their children are going to be working for your children. They don't want that. You don't have to go and make them homeschool their kids. Once you see enough of the success of homeschool kids, they'll homeschool their kids themselves. And the more of a network there is and the less work it is, then better for everybody. They'll move on their own, especially when the ship is sinking. The great thing I used to tell when I did this What We Believe speech, I used to say that America's like the Titanic and we got to ram this iceberg. Well, America hit the iceberg and put a giant gash in it. And then the USS United States put the engines into reverse, backed up 4 or 5 miles, got ourselves up to full speed and hit the iceberg again. So it's time to get to the lifeboats now, folks. And we got to lash these lifeboats together and make it easier for people to do these things in a parallel way. Let's move on. I'd like to get through all of these tonight if I can, and we're about halfway through. Rob Findesen wants to know, random question, would you ever wear a kilt? I wear a kilt every night I do at the Stratosphere Lounge. Mark Jumper wants to know, what should be the guiding principles of conservative foreign policy? One of my favorite questions ever. It's very simple. America's foreign policy can be described in one word: freedom. Period. Freedom. That's Americans' foreign policy. It's consistent, it's predictable, it's moral, it's decent, it's appropriate, and it's right. Freedom. So, what's our position on what's going on in Syria? Assad needs to go. And when I say he needs to go because he's murdering his own people. Now, here's the difference between the virtual president and the actual president. The actual president says Assad needs to go. And he says this like he says, basically he sends him a strongly worded letter. And he says it in such a way that Kelly Beard says about the kilt question, screenshot or it didn't happen. You'll get your screenshots later, don't you worry. And they're not going to be cheap either. I've got a members only site that's going to open up, and it's $9.95 a month. Now look, here's the situation on Syria. When Barack Obama talks about Syria, he talks about Syria as if he was a community organizer in Chicago. He's the president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world. If Assad wants to go, if he wants Assad to go, he can have Assad go, and he should have Assad go. I don't buy the Powell Doctrine for a second. This idea that you break it, you buy it, you get involved with a country, you decide you're going to go in there or do something or other, then you suddenly have to rebuild this country from scratch like we did in Iraq. I think that's utter, absolute insanity and nonsense. Virtual president of the United States would have Bashar Assad out of office within 48 hours because we would continue to launch cruise missiles at where we knew he was until he was dead. And that would be the end of that kind of oppression there. Then the question becomes, what would you do in his place? And having spoken and gotten to know just one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, Cynthia Farahat, who's on Facebook, and she's just one of the best people in the world. And Cynthia is fought this fight from age 22. She was an Egyptian dissident. She was on Mubarak's death list. She was on the Muslim Brotherhood's death wish from age 22. She ran an opposition party for 10 years in opposition to a government that routinely murdered people. And when she talks about dissidents and when she talks about resistance to totalitarian regimes, I listen to her and I believe her because she's been there. And every time I talk to Sin about things like the democracy movement in Egypt or in any other part of the world, forget about it. Forget about what country, whatever it is. Every time I talk to her about it, I am so astonished and so ashamed at how easy it would be for us to plant these seeds of freedom everywhere, and I mean without the cost of an American life. You could, without the cost of an American life, you could, through predator strikes, but really those are a little more finesse than we need in the early stages, through cruise missile strikes, through highly targeted JDAM strikes from B-2 bombers or whatever. Listen, I would do the same thing with Syria that I would do with any other threat to freedom and mass murder. I would tell Assad he's got 48 hours to vacate the country. If he leaves now, I'm not going to follow him, but he's got 48 hours to go. And if he didn't go, then I would start to launch immediate cruise missile strikes. First thing I would do is I would completely erode whatever air defense capabilities he has left. That alone ought to get the Syrian generals to shoot this miserable swine. But I'd take down the air defenses, and then once I had the air defenses down, I'd start cruise missile strikes only at command and control headquarters. Right? I try to get him as much as I can. And once we had the air defenses down, we wouldn't be, messing around with these little pinpricks that come from Tomahawk missiles. I'd put some B-2s over Syria. I'd find out where he is, and I'd put 2,000-pound JDAMs on every place I thought he was until he was dead. And then we'd see if they could have some free and fair elections, and we'd monitor those. And if it turns out they put a guy in place who was worse, then we'd do this again. What's my motivation for this? How dare I? How you can just hear the liberal heads exploding all across the country, right? How dare you? Listen, freedom is better than slavery. Living is better than being murdered. That's how dare I. We have the most powerful forces in the history of the world because of our freedom. People deserve to live free, and they do not deserve to be murdered by their own government. So, you have a choice now, Mr. Assad. You can leave and take whatever money you've managed to steal, or the United States of America is going to rain fire from the sky until you stop killing 80,000 innocent people. And then I would have the CIA do what the CIA does. I would look at who represents freedom and democracy. You know, everybody said, I was skeptical about the democracy movement in Egypt, and I was skeptical when Cynthia said that I wasn't using it for lying. On the contrary, but in Tahrir Square, when the thing really started to go down, she said they're ringing the church bells of Christian churches. Muslims and Copts are hugging each other in the streets, and everybody's talking about freedom, and everybody's talking about democracy, and everybody's talking about rights. And I thought, man, I hope you're right. And then the Muslim Brotherhood moved into Egypt and started to take over. And I thought, man, I could see this coming. I knew this was going to happen. And then the Egyptian people went out there and protested the Muslim Brotherhood. They demonstrated against the Muslim Brotherhood. They took to the streets against the Muslim Brotherhood. Everybody wants to be free. Everybody does. And when I think about the power we have to surgically remove these murderers and to influence through things like Voice of America and just through things like a little bit of aid, but mostly just through the moral example of being on the side of right. You know, the single greatest thing that you can lay at Barack Obama's doorstep, and there's a lot you can lay at his doorstep in terms of missed opportunities and just criminal activities. But there were people dying in the streets of Iran ready to overthrow that government, the worst government in the world, and we couldn't even come out and say we're behind you? Of course not, because we know what side he's on. I would basically say, man, if you have a freedom movement in the streets of people are fighting for their freedom against these tyrants, I would say the United States of America is the arsenal of democracy, and we're the champions of freedom. And we are no longer going to sit here and tolerate these regimes that do nothing but breed threats to our national security. Iranians getting a nuclear weapon is a threat to our national security. I am not talking about sending American troops to be the policemen of the world and to go over there and get killed for people that don't give a damn. I am not talking about that at all. But I am talking about applying the kind of pressure that only these murdering predator bastards understand, and that is force. And if you're prepared to use force against these people, you generally don't have to use force against these people. Somebody just said didn't work in Vietnam. Tim Morris, USA, said didn't work in Vietnam. Let me tell you what I do know about Vietnam, Tim. When you are fighting a war for 11 years and you tell your naval pilots that as they ingress into a target using the same route that they've flown every single time for the last 4 years at the exact same time of day, and when you tell Navy pilots coming ashore from aircraft carriers that as they fly over Da Nang Harbor and look down at the SAM missiles being unloaded from Russian freighters that are going to shoot them down next week, and you tell them that they're not allowed to go and hit those targets, and you tell them that they have to fly the same routes the same time every day, when you tell people who are flying jets who don't have guns on them, who only have air-to-air missiles, that the rules of engagement say that no matter that we've seen these planes take off from radar, fly from North Vietnam to intercept our guys, when you say the rules of engagement are we have to have a visual identification on that target and see the red stars on its wings before we can take a shot, then I don't particularly know if I want to see that the Vietnam War was exactly an example of how to fight smart. Vietnam War was everything exactly the opposite of what I'm talking about, putting great, brave men on the ground without any kind of a sense of a mission, any kind of a sense of objective, tying both hands behind their backs and then telling them to sit out there in the jungles for 11 years and get killed. Nonsense. Nonsense. That war was the clearest example I have ever seen of a victory that was thrown away, because every single time Lyndon Johnson would hit a North Vietnamese target to the degree where it hurt them, they started talking, and then the instant he would do that, he'd say a ceasefire. He'd try to show him how swell we were, what swell guys we were. You know, this war was over when Nixon started bombing Hanoi. Once he started bombing Hanoi, they refused to talk peace for 11 years, and Nixon put bombers over Hanoi with B-52s, and they were at the table like that. Like that. Creighton Abrams had a plan to take existing forces in theater, no extra troops, no extra nothing. This was in the last 6 months of the war before we got out of there. And he said, I have enough troops on the ground now so that instead of constantly wandering around in the jungles and patrols and getting into this war of attrition and body counts and all of this nonsense, all of this, we're going to trade American boys for Vietnamese kids. Are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind? That's just absolutely insane. Abrams basically said in the last couple of months of that war, he said, I've got enough forces in theater now that I could take an armored column. We would go right up the Ho Chi Minh Trail. We'd just go up the trail. We'd go up the trail with an armored column. We'd put our air power where we needed it, which is in close air support of this thing, and we would drive this column to the center of Hanoi, and from the center of Hanoi, then we'd start having a little discussion about peace. I absolutely believe that would have worked. Absolutely. Absolutely believe that would have worked. We never, ever, ever fought that war. And the same for Korea, by the way. You know, same thing for Korea. We didn't start either of those wars. In the Korean War, these communist murdering savages come pouring over the border, right? They drive our entire UN forces down into the Pusan pocket down there, right? And instead of trying to reinforce this pocket, along comes MacArthur with the most brilliant tactical stroke in history. He lands at Incheon. He cuts all of their supply lines, puts his army between the North Koreans and Pyongyang. They make an incredible retreat. They retreat above the 38th parallel. We push them to the absolute corner, and all of a sudden China gets in the war. Now listen carefully, because this is going to really cause some heads to explode, right? This is 1952, 1953, maybe even a little earlier. China gets in this war. And MacArthur says, we need to A-bomb these mass wave attacks against our people. And Truman says, no. Now, I'm just going to speculate on something here, right? There were no A-bombs in China in 1950. The Russians had a couple by 1948, I think. if we had basically said to the Chinese, your attack on our people after their unprovoked attack against us is an act of war against the United States of America. And if you do not stop your firing on our forces within 24 hours, we will respond to you with nuclear weapons. If they kept attacking us and we had put, I think MacArthur wanted to use 12 A-bombs. If he had put 12 A-bombs, not on Chinese cities, we're not talking about bombing Beijing or Shanghai. If he had put 12 atomic bombs on those mass Chinese forces in Korea, then there would not have been a Vietnam. And there wouldn't have been any of this nonsense. None of it. None of it would have happened. None. I don't understand it. I think it was the greatest mistake in history. I really do. I absolutely do. I think what it showed the world in 1950 or 51, I forget when it was when MacArthur, I think it must have been 51, when we said that we are willing to let American soldiers be killed by mass Chinese waves and be driven back from winning this war, being driven back to the 38th parallel. When we said we're not willing to use A-bombs to defend our people, that we'd rather have our soldiers be killed on the ground and driven back and frozen to death, that was a signal to the communists and to everybody else who was watching that we don't believe in ourselves and we don't believe in what we say we believe in, and all you have to do to America is just push us around as much as you want to. I think it was the catastrophic mistake of the 20th century. I'm sorry. And to those people say, oh, how dare you talk about bombing Chinese soldiers? Well, nobody had a problem shooting with 50 caliber machine guns. Nobody had problems dropping conventional bombs on those Chinese troops. A dead Chinese soldier is the same as any other dead Chinese soldier. I'd rather have dead Chinese soldiers than dead American soldiers. I'm a little old-fashioned in that regard. Right? So what happens is you don't have the will to defend this society. You don't have the will to defend Western values. You don't have the will to defend freedoms. You don't have the will to defend America and everything America stands in. We didn't invade North Korea and we didn't invade China. When we don't have the will to defend ourselves, is it any wonder that we have all these problems out here today? I don't know. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. If MacArthur had called for bombing Beijing, that would have been a war crime, in my opinion. They're putting troops against our troops. We're putting troops against their troops. I wasn't talking about doing that. But if they've got mass Chinese units in the field that are killing our guys in human wave attacks and taking victory from the jaws of, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory and pushing us back and having all of our guys freeze to death and die out there. No one ever talks about Korea, those poor people. Those soldiers were amazing. They're freezing out there in the middle of nowhere, and we had the means to stop these people, and we didn't. So, my foreign policy is freedom. You know what? That's freedom. You shouldn't do that to your people. I'm not going to say that we need to go and interfere in every single country's business. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying that when Assad is murdering 80,000 of his own people, and we can put some bombs onto Assad's head and see if that makes a difference, I'd be willing to do it. I would not be willing, under any circumstances, to put a U.S. invasion force in there and have our young men get killed for those people. You got to fight for your own freedom. We should be helping these people, and we should be doing things like unleashing the CIA and especially unleashing our propaganda outfits. Propaganda, by the way, is not necessarily a dirty word. I think when you talk about the propaganda that Voice of America did, was it just told the truth to the communist bloc, and people had hope. It gave them hope. Last thing I'll say on this subject in terms of Obama standing up to the Iranians, which he didn't do, but after the Cold War was over and the Iron Curtain fell and the Soviet Union fell, the one thing you heard from everywhere, but especially in places like Poland and Czechoslovakia and Hungary and all these other places, you heard people say that when Ronald Reagan said, "We're on your side," we knew we had a chance. It gave us hope. When Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher and Pope John Paul II, when those three people said, no, you shouldn't have to live this way. This is a crime that you're living this way, and free people stand with you. That's what gave Solidarity the strength to do it. You never would have heard the name Lech Walesa. He would have been taken out and shot in the back of an alley someplace if Pope John Paul II hadn't gone up there basically and hugged and kissed that man and made him visible. Once he did that, figuratively even, game was over. Game was over. Anyway, that's foreign policy. David Holy. Welcome back, Bill. It's good to be back. I like your idea of parallel structure system we introduced some time back. What could we do in the event of an economic collapse or if the dollar becomes worthless? Personally, this is my biggest fear for the near future. We talked about parallel structures earlier, so I'm going to just make a very quick addendum to this. This idea of parallel structures of local networks of independent and interdependent group of local people who you know, who are doing things in your neighborhood, and taking as much away from the federal government as you can, pushing what can be pushed down to the states and then as much as possible down to the local level to individual people. Not only is that the best way to avert this catastrophe, but it's also the best way to survive a catastrophe. These networks need to be put in place because I think they're the best way to prevent a collapse. But if some kind of collapse like that does happen, we need to know who we can depend on. We need to know who gets it. We need to know who understands it. We need to understand that these ideas are going to have to be essential to getting us through the other side of this thing. If this kind of collapse happens, then we're going to have half of the population that's simply not going to know what to do. When I say what to do, I don't mean even the important simple things like how to, set a trap for an animal or how to grow food or how to, boil water to kill diseases. They're simply going to not know what to do. They're going to have no initiative. We got to get these networks in place quickly in order to prevent a collapse. But if a collapse happens, we need to know who we can count on. And I'm not saying who we can count on so we can exclude other people. I'm not saying we need to be the guys in the bunkers with the guns keeping out everybody else. We need to be the people who can go out into these communities and set an example and basically say, hey, listen, you can go out there and wail and scream and cry and murder each other if you want to, but over here, we are trying to find a way to grow some food, and we're welcome to have you come and work with us if you want to. But if you're thinking about coming in and just taking our stuff, you probably should know that every single one of us is extremely heavily armed and we know how to use these weapons. That's what I think the worst case scenario looks like. John Swetlin wants to know, Bill, I imagine you and Alan West have had a few great conversations by now. Care to let this wannabe fly on the wall and on some of the back and forth between the two of you? We have actually had some fun conversations right now. By now. And the reason I wanted to take that question is because, well, first of all, I wanted to brag. But the main reason I wanted to take it was that Alan West is without question one of the most genuine, open, warm people I have ever met. And in terms of politicians, he is just not in that league. Everything you think you like about Alan West, you would like about Alan West in person multiplied by a factor of 100 or so. He's a big guy. He's a big, solid, strong guy. He's got a great smile, and he smiles all the time. He has a terrific sense of humor. He's extremely self-deprecating. He's constantly talking about his two daughters and how brilliant they are and how they take after their mom and how he's just an artillery grunt and he's just a hired gun, and he's the most self-effacing, humble, gentle guy I've ever met, and he's simply a magnificent man. He's kind. He's very genuinely, like I say, genuinely humble guy. Extremely competent, very confident, very capable, very optimistic, a genuinely sunny guy. And I just can't say enough about him. He's just the real deal. He's the real deal. He's gone out there, and as I said in that shooter Afterburner, he's gone out there and fought the monsters without becoming the monster. He's a good, solid family man, and when he'd been working at Next Generation for several weeks before I finally got to meet him. I came in to do an Afterburner segment, I think, and he was standing there facing away, and I just reached around, patted him on the shoulder, and said, I've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time. And he just said, oh, Bill, it's so good to see you. I nearly swooned, I nearly fainted away. He's a terrific, honest-to-God, fantastically decent, good man. And I hope we'll be doing some work together in the future. And we get through all these questions and some news about that too, hopefully. So he's a terrific guy. And you need to go to his Facebook page and like it. And he's got some big plans for the future in addition to PJTV. I don't know if he's going to run again. I asked him full on. And I got the impression that he doesn't want to, that he's got bigger fish to fry. But I suspect he could be talked out of it, and I hope he can be. He's just an amazing, good, warm guy. It's just that old saying, right? He's the kind of guy that every single guy wants to be friends with. There's just nothing not to like about the guy. He's got a hilariously great sense of humor. I was I was doing a trifecta, and just before I went on, I was just wrapping up the makeup, and I was just running a comb through my hair, which I normally do. It just takes me I don't know 25, 30 minutes, and I was just like combing my hair in a mirror before I went on camera, and all the way across the producer's room, there's 25, 30 people in between us, and he sees me combing my hair, and he starts singing, "You're beautiful. You're beautiful. You're beautiful to me." And everybody's laughing, and I just walked out there and I just yelled at him. I said, Alan, if you're going to be in the political punditry trade, you're going to have to come up with some insights and not just state the obvious. For God's sakes, man. I mean, if you're going to be in this business, try to come up with something fresh and interesting, and it's not like a duh. God, the people we have to work with in this business. Am I married, Bill? No, I'm not. Anyway, that's Alan West. Joe Palladino wants to know, what's your opinion of Rubio's Watergate 2 and the insanity that is the liberal media? I'll just give this 60 seconds. The fact that a Democratic senator can have an ongoing prostitute scandal and that's not covered, and a guy takes a sip of water in the middle of a speech is somehow earth-defying news is yet another example of the bottom that will never be reached through the mainstream media. Every time I'm sure they're on the ground floor, I am utterly convinced that there's nowhere to go but down, but they find a way to go down. So anyway, it's silly, and I think we should be mocking it at every opportunity. I usually have a couple sips of water when I do a speech. And I'll do for you what I did. I had something at the GOP the other night. I was in a little speech and stuff, and I was just talking. I said, "I'm sorry, excuse me, just one moment. Excuse me 1 second while I ruin my political career." Oh, boy, that was worth the presidency. That was delicious. So anyway, the fact that they make a big deal about him taking a sip of water is nuts. Now, with that said, I think the lighting, as usual, was appalling. The location was appalling. Marco should know by now that if you're going to do a long speech, you need to tank up on water in advance. It dries you out speaking for any length of time. You actually almost have to kind of overhydrate yourself. And frankly, he should have had a glass of water next to him, and should have been in an environment where taking a sip of water is not a big deal. Somebody cut together, of course, a montage of Obama drinking all of the water from all the different times, but nevertheless, it's just a joke. It's ridiculous. So mock it. I'm going to mock it. And it's a great line, by the way. Every time I take a sip of water from now on forever, I'm just going to use that same line. It got a huge laugh, and it's going to get a huge laugh every time I do it. That's a sign of how unserious they are, and it's also a sign of how little actual scandal there is on our side. If you're going to make a 4-alarm fire out of Marco Rubio taking a sip of water, that means, number one, you're afraid of Marco Rubio, and number two, you got nothing worse on us, at least this week anyway. Michael Hanna wants to know, after seeing the success of your fact-checking army, are there other things you would consider crowdsourcing? And then there's a second part. I'll get to that in a second. I put a post up on the Virtual Research Brigade, and for those of you that are members of it, I opened it up to anybody. You can just go over to Virtual Research Brigade on Facebook, and somebody should approve your request. I wanted to thank all of you that are members of that. I don't get to thank any of you nearly as much as I could. So much of that stuff ended up in the State of the Union on guns. It ended up in the inaugural, and as I said on that post, the rest of it ends up in the wetware, and it's going to get used sometime or another. I love starting things like this. I thought I'd have 10 people. We ended up with almost 900, and on some level, 900 is too unruly, really, to use in the way that I originally thought, but everybody was having so much fun, and there was so much interesting stuff going on. That's what happens when you put bright people together. So I'm very, very happy with how it goes, and maybe we can think about doing some other things like that. The second part of your question is, if your fans were to get together a monthly sum for you that exceeded your current income, would you consider leaving your jobs and working full time for your fans? Which leads me to a subject that I know a lot of us want to talk about. There is, in fact, a way to sum your money and get me to spend more time with my fans, and that's actually through Declaration Entertainment. And look, we're always real honest on this show, and Jeremy and I have been exceedingly busy. Somebody's texting me repeatedly every now and then. That's somebody with something very important, or maybe somebody's watching Stratosphere Lounge or something, and I'll just see if that's got anything to do with this. Just a little personal message. Here's the thing. We have finished the Arroyo. We have distribution. The distribution mechanism obviously goes out to the membership, but there was a fair amount of money that was taken in order to make that movie beyond what the membership raised, and the problem is that this distribution market is falling apart. So we actually have some very serious options that are really coming to fruition, but that's just backpedaling. The fact is, we've been very busy, and Jeremy and I both feel we've really been neglecting the Declaration membership, and I've been so locked up with this virtual presidency. I haven't done any firewalls for a while that used to bring in new members and stuff. So I'm glad we got this question, because I wanted to talk about this. We are about to really, really jumpstart this thing again. We're going to do a best of firewall DVD. We're gonna release this Arroyo, I think, in the near future. I've got actually enough income now through a bunch of other things that are happening that I can start actually working on Aurora and doing things like starting to texture the model. We're going to shoot a sizzle reel for Aurora. I've got some movie star friends of mine who are cast members on that, and I think we might do a script read pretty soon. But one thing we're really going to do, and we had this conversation, I was almost late for the show talking about it, we are going to do a show that's probably kind of a halfway house between the Stratosphere Lounge, which will stay, and the Stratosphere Lounge that it would like to be someday, which is a giant talk show. We've been knocking this idea around for a while, but what we're going to do, I'll just give you a working title. I'm thinking about calling it, what was I going to call it? Bill Whittle's Totally Awesome Swingin' Space Age Bachelor Pad. And what I thought we'd do is we'd open up this room a little bit, because there's a decent-sized couch behind me, and light it and amp it up a little bit. And what we thought we would do is we wanted to do a show where we would talk politics for about an hour, and it would be me and Jeremy and two guests, and one guest would be Alan West, and another guest would be some of our friends. Maybe we get Johnny Voight to come down, and we can get a bunch of other people to come down, and a lot of political people, Andrew Klavan, and we'd have basically three or four of us sitting around this room. And this time the difference, of course, would be we'd probably be drinking heavily, or if not heavily, then at least enthusiastically. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to do a show where we would take me and other people. We'll use Alan as an example. He hasn't agreed to this, obviously, and I can't speak for him, but there are a lot of people out there who I know who are, like somewhat celebrities, and people are real interested in politics. Dwight Schultz, for example, is on the A-Team. Dwight does a lot of radio, and he's a terrific guy. Mike Walsh writes for National Review, and Mike's a great guy. And we all sit around and talk politics, and kind of get a little lubricated. And I think that would actually be really interesting, because somebody just wrote "Get Cersei." Nick Cersei. No, we're not having Nick Cersei on the show. If Nick Cersei appears on the show, it's the end of the world as we know it. Nick Cersei is a great example. He's on Justified. He was the best friend in Castaway. In fact, I didn't know that. I saw Castaway years before I saw Nick Cersei. I hadn't seen Castaway since it was made in '98, and I went and saw it. He goes, "My God, there's my buddy Nick Cersei." Nick Cersei is a special, special guy. And by the way, if you want to have some laughs, go on YouTube and look for Nick Cersei's acting school. That's just brilliant. Brilliant. But basically, what I want to do is I want to have a show where we sit around, we have a couple of chicken wings or something like that, and we just some stuff to drink. We're not going to be drunk. We're not going to be Steve Green about this, but just enough so that we're a little bit loose, and we're going to sit around the room, and we're just going to sit around, and we're going to talk politics with our feet up. And it's going to be four friends having a good time. It's not going to be anything like this kind of four-person interview thing. It's just going to be a blast. We're just going to sit back and be a blast. And we're going to have fun. And I think that would be a really, really fun thing to do. And I've got this big TV over here on this wall. And we could do the coverage. We'd have 4 cameras in here. We'd have the coverage so that I could just have a couple clips. I say, hey, look, Hillary Clinton apparently banged her head. She forgot something else about Benghazi. And we'll just run it up there in real time. And we'll sit around and we'll mock it. You know, we'll do like a mystery science theater thing. We'll be, you know, oh, you know, that's, you know, nice haircut, that kind of thing. I just think it'd just be a lot of fun. So what we'll do is, I think we haven't got it completely about inviting Zoe, of course, Zoe, Clavin, all the regulars, and try and get a couple of our celebrity friends. You know, we have a lot of friends in show business who are out of the closet, and bring some of these people over, and we just sit in the room. We'd have a good time and have a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, be real high energy, and none of this I'll talk, you talk, you talk, you talk. It'd just be a giant ongoing screaming match, and you know, and the great thing about guys getting together is you get to insult each other, you know, and that'd be a lot of fun too. So what we'll probably do is we need to regrow the Declaration membership, and this is something that we have to do for our existing Declaration citizen producers, because we are going to be getting this movie out the door, and we are going to be starting on the next one, but we have been very neglectful. Both Jeremy and I know it for a long time. Jeremy has got big things going on that's good for the future of this company, and I've got big things that are going on that are good for everybody too. But what I think we'll probably do is, if we shoot for an hour or hour and a half, we'll probably see if we cover 4 or 5 subjects. So we'll boil those things down into 15-minute, 20-minute segments, 5-minute, you know, 10, 20-minute segments, whatever. We're going to change the subject now. We'll talk about, you know, guns or whatever. And we'll break those things down. And I think what we'll do is, for each one of those, we'll probably make them members-only content. But what we will do is we'll pull the best 5 minutes out of it. And then we'll put that up for YouTube on for free. So here's the best 5 minutes of the 15 minutes. Here's the best 3 minutes of the 15 minutes on guns. Or maybe we'll just do here's the best 5 minutes of the whole hour, whatever. We have to make some significant part of it members only content, because we have to reward the people that are paying the bills. I mean, this office is paid for by Declaration Entertainment. This computer is paid for by Declaration Entertainment. Everything I don't do at PJTV is done through Declaration Entertainment, and the citizen producers have been paying off their cards forever. And we don't need a gigantic increase in numbers. I think, you know, I really think we could do that. And I think we'd make the show interesting enough, and we'll continue to do more firewalls. This virtual presidency thing and the holidays and everything is it's just been crazy. Kevin Sorbo is a great example. 13 Shades. Kevin's a good friend of mine. I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be fun to sit here and have Hercules on this chair and say, so Kevin, man, you know, you were in New Zealand when the Lewinsky thing broke. What was that like? And you know, I think it'd just be fun. And I think it'd be good. And we'll definitely, we are going to do it. And we're going to do it for our Declaration members. And one thing we learned, and I learned from working at PJTV, is you need to have incentive to get people to become members, but you can't put everything behind the firewall so that nobody sees it. You gotta tease enough of it out there so people, man, I really want to see this, and can't just lock it up. No one's ever going to know about it. So that's going to happen. That's going to happen sooner rather than later. I think we'll see the first of that show by the end of March at the latest. Yeah, exactly right. Darren just said it'd be like dinner for 5 but less ostentatious. Exactly. It would be 4 or 5 interesting people having an interesting discussion. And the key to this working is the same thing that I think powers Trifecta, although Trifecta is a lot more scripted than this is, and Trifecta is limited by the fact that we're not in the same room, so no one can talk over each other. This would be much, much faster and much looser than Trifecta. But I do think the one thing that makes Trifecta work to the degree that it does work is we're all friends. We all, you know, we love each other. We're just great admirers of each other. And when you got 4 or 5 friends in there, it's just so much fun. And ideally, that's what we'd like. We'd like to set up a situation where it's the kind of thing where you just wish you were in the room with us. And then I've had that experience many times, and it's been the great fortune of my life, thanks to you people, that I actually finally get to meet some of these people I've admired all my life. Burt Rutan, for example. Wouldn't that be great? Great to have Burt Rutan come in here and chat, talk politics, and, that'd be fantastic. Anyway, that's the plan, and other things coming up for Declaration Entertainment. So if you've been hanging on and you feel neglected, it's our fault, and we're responsible, and we're sorry, and we're going to make it up to you. And hopefully we start dangling some of this stuff out, we can get some new members. Want to get through this thing? We're running out of time. We'll go a little bit later. We've been doing an hour and a half, but we'll push it until we get done because we're getting there. Thank you, Michael. That was a great question, Michael Hanna. Robert Line, second time for this question. You've hinted that Aurora will be produced as a miniseries. How do you plan to distribute it? HBO would seem to be hostile territory. Look, I was at a pitch meeting and somebody said, wouldn't this work better as a series? And I've been a movie guy all my life, and frankly, I'm maybe 54 in April. And as a guy who spent most of his life where television was this little box with the 480 lines of vertical resolution and a thin little speaker that sits on a countertop and is this big, that's what television has been for me. Now, thanks to you kind people, I bought a 60-inch LED television that sits on my wall, and I sit there and watch movies, and I'm like, man alive, this is better than just about anything. So the great thing about turning Aurora into a series is the main thing you're really trying to do is you're trying to move the needle culturally, right? I mean, I want to tell the story, and the big mistake we make is to try and do conservative projects. This is no, this is an action adventure story. It's a thriller. It's and there's great character depth. So what you're trying to do basically with Aurora is you're trying to do a sci-fi adventure that's visually arresting and interesting, where exciting and dramatic things happen, and people riot around a car and smash a window, and and they cut open the pretty girl's face, and you like this girl, and she's, you sympathize with her, you empathize with her, and if I get the person I want for this, you really will, because she's really smoking hot, and she's a conservative, and everybody knows her name, and so the way you win and the way you move the needle is you have people you love in a car, and there's a riot, and somebody throws a rock through the window and cuts the face of the pretty girl, but the pretty girl works for a company that is private enterprise, that uses nuclear power, that is being pursued by the state and the feds to be shut down because they're trying to do brave, adventurous things on their own money. And who's the bad guys? It's Occupy Wall Street is the bad guys. Guys in ski masks are your bad guys. That's how you move the needle. Now, if you do a movie like that, and the movie's even a moderate success, it gets seen by maybe 1 million or 2 people. It's in theaters for a week or 2, and then it's gone. Then it lives in DVD. If you can get it into a miniseries form like Walking Dead, then it lives out there for a year, 6 months anyway. And you do 12 episodes, so instead of, an hour and a half, 2 hours, you do 12 hours. And then if it gets picked up, then you get another season. And the second season, now you're not doing a Mission to Jupiter. Now you're at war with China on series. And then the third season, you've got a plan to fight against this overwhelming disadvantage you have by setting up a sort of a suspense mission out in Hyperion, in orbit around Saturn. And all of a sudden it becomes a cultural phenomenon like Star Trek. And I when it finally dawned on me to do it as a series, I just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, what's the matter with me? I spent 72 hours with James T. Kirk on the Starship Enterprise in the gold velour jersey. I spent 72 hours with him. I didn't spend an hour or 2 with him. It's madness not to do it. Now, the problem with doing it as a series is twofold. Number one, you have a higher production cost because you're producing more stuff, but it doesn't scale. I mean, once you buy the sets and you get the crew and everything, you can do 12 hours. The short form is it doesn't cost 12 times. If you have a 2-hour movie or a 12-hour series, it's not 6 times more expensive to do the series. It's maybe twice as expensive. So there's that. The hard part is getting it sold. If the stuff is good, and if you're paying for it, you have to understand that TV studios, like AMC, buy their programming. And if you go to them with the programming funded and they just air it, you've already got an advantage. You got a disadvantage because you've got a conservative message. HBO's out of the question. I wouldn't want it on HBO because I don't want people to have to pay for it. I want it to be on basic cable. I want it to be on AMC or Sci-Fi or TNT or G4 or whatever. I want them to promote it, and I want it to be seen. So I think we have a good chance of doing that, and the entire thing comes down to distribution. What it really comes down to is finding conservative donors who understand that if they want to get the country back, if they want to stop this bleeding and keep some of their money before these Marxists come to take it all, I have to convince conservative donors that the money shouldn't be going to the RNC. The money should be going into making movies. That's a very hard thing to convince them of, although it's a little easier later than it was before this election. Got to convince them. It's got to be in the culture. And the nice thing about something like this is you can get them some of their money back. You're going to make some money back. Whether or not you make enough money back to get them out of it, I don't know. But you'll make some money back. You'll make revenues for the show. You'll own the DVD sales. You'll own the foreign rights. You could probably get most of their money back. You might make a profit. Who knows? You might actually make a big profit. Then there's things like merchandise and, a video game and, that kind of thing. It should be a slam dunk. It's not a slam dunk. It's hard to convince people to part with money, especially in this environment. But one of the nice things and one of the hardest things for me who've been waiting for my whole life to do these movies. I've been wanting to do these movies since I lost the Air Force Academy, since I was 17. That's damn near 40 years now. It's hard to keep waiting, but what is happening now, and much more quickly, it's really accelerating. And again, that Horowitz thing was a real Rubicon. Is that now my political influence and my reputation in the political arena has given me credibility among money people that I never would have had if I was just an unknown filmmaker. So that's the plan. You stay in the political fight. You try and get out there and get these things done. Keep fighting in the trenches, which is what the political fight is, and then you try to convince people that the film thing, the Aurora thing, is this is the Incheon landing. This is when you're putting guys ashore in the enemy's rear. You're putting guys ashore, and you're not coming back. We're not going to send 12 guys in a rubber raft on the beaches of Normandy. We got to land. We got to put enough guys on there so we don't get pushed back into the ocean. But anyway, because of the great things that have been happening and because the revenue has been increasing for me, in addition to the declaration stuff, which again pays so many of these bills, I can actually start doing some Aurora pre-production now. I can get the computer model textured, and once I have the model textured, I can start doing, really top quality sizzle reel animations. I can show the ship in orbit. I can show it on its way to Jupiter. I can show the mechanics of how it works, all that stuff. So that's good. We still got a bunch of questions. We have to push through them a little faster. I would like to get them all tonight if we can. Dan Ramsey wants to know, hello, Mr. Virtual President. Hello, Dan Ramsey. Not trying to start a big thing here, but I was wondering, aside from the historical links between the USA and Judeo-Christian philosophy, you seem to talk a lot less about belief in God and the fact that God gives us our rights than just about any other conservative pundit I've heard of. Not complaining, love and agree with you. Would you care to talk about your personal religious beliefs? If none, would you care to talk about that? And Pat Bigos also said you previously mentioned that you used to be an atheist but are now changing your mind. Where are you on your road to Damascus? Would you return to the Anglican Church or choose something different? I'm going to answer that question, and I'm just not going to answer it tonight because we're almost an hour and a half into this, and I've done a look at the metrics of how this exists on YouTube, and by the time we get out of the first hour, we're down to 25-30% of total viewership. So once we get past 90 minutes, there's 5% of the people watching. So I'm not dodging the question. I'll take that question. If you can remember it, I'll take it next time. And I want to do an all-aviation show, too, an all-flying show. Somebody had a question about aerodynamics. I'd like to do one just about flying. That'd be really fun. So I'm sorry about that, and I'm not trying to dodge the question. But the rest of the questions are pretty straightforward and pretty simple, so I'll get through them quick. And we will do it because it's an important issue, and I'm more than happy to talk about it. William Diamond says, as a stand-up guy and all-around alpha male, I can barely dress myself. That's why we wear the kilt. It's very simple. What are your favorite pickup lines and strategies for women? Also, what are your tastes? I guess tastes in women is what he means. I have to tell you, I've never used a pickup line in my life. The only line I've ever used is, hi, my name's Bill, or mind if I join you? I will say something about this, though. It might be advice to young men, certainly. I am one day going to do an advice to young men, and it's going to be, here's advice for you at 7, here's advice for you if you're 14, here's advice for you if you're 20, here's advice for you if you're 29, here's advice for you if you're 35. I think that really would be fun. But for the young men who are out there looking at this, if you're already good with women, then you don't need any help from me. I've gotten better. I've actually gotten good over many, many, many years of hard work and failure, just like everything else in my life. I had to walk out in the desert for 30 years to figure out how all this stuff works. The thing I will say, and again, I can get in a lot more detail about this, but I'll give you guys just a real short form. If you're one of those young men that is not primarily concerned with looks, you're going to be happy for the rest of your life. You should get down on your knees and thank God that you are built that way. And I'm as serious as I can be. There are so many good women out there, and I'm not saying that good-looking women are not good women, but the odds are against you. If you're one of these people that is looking for, that sees beauty in a beautiful person, you are blessed, and you are going to be happy, and you're going to make somebody very happy, and that's most people, and your life is going to be richer than you could ever imagine. Some young men grow into that. Many young men grow into that through experience. I've always thought that was simply the greatest thing that could ever happen to you, was a person who had the ability to see the inner beauty in everybody. I know I'm starting to sound like Oprah here, but I mean that from the bottom of my heart. There are so many good women out there, and there are so few good men, that if you are the kind of person that is interested in that, then all you have to do is be a man. You really, in order to get a good woman, all you have to do is be a man. You just have to be a man. And being a man is actually very simple. As I mentioned in the virtual inaugural, it's almost like living a life of virtue is pretty much it. Don't be a jerk. Do the right thing. Pay your bills, have a job, do what you say you're going to do. You're 3/4 of the way there. Being a man in terms of romantic relationships is not much more complicated, but it's based on the same basic principle. In a romantic relationship, being a man means you always get a car door for a woman, and you get a car door, and you get the restaurant door and every other door. You step up and get the door, and you hold the door while they walk through it. You will surprise many modern women if you pull up to a restaurant in your car, and as you get out of the car, they'll almost instantly start to get out of their car. You say, just wait there. You go around and get the door for them. Even feminists, there is a strain of feminism, a particularly virulent strain, that will be outraged by that. You want to run from those people as fast as you can. But everybody else will be impressed and amazed. And here's something else that you should do all the time. You need to be aware of this. And most women are aware of it. Most men have no clue today. But most women will be aware of it. And if they're not aware of it, they'll ask you about it. When they ask you about it, you have to be very, very, very subtle and understated about this. But whenever you're walking down a street, you always have to be on the side of the street where the cars are. You always have to be on the side where the traffic is. That means that it's car, and then you, and then the woman you're walking with. And when you cross the street, you have to switch sides, so that sometimes you'll turn a corner and you'll literally have to be like a little fighter airplane that's kind of escorting a bomber. You have to kind of just slide around about. Now you're on the street side, and women notice this, and women who know what this means won't generally say anything. They'll just be slayed. You'll be pretty much home free from that point on, because what you're basically doing is you're basically saying, I am putting myself between a car that goes out of control or a splash of a puddle or whatever, but you're not saying it, see? You're not being a jerk. You're not basically showing off, hey, baby, I would get between. No, you just do it. You just do it. You don't say a word about it. And if they ask you because they don't have any idea what it means, because it's so rare today, then just say, I'm just like to stay between you and the cars. And that's all you say. You don't make a fuss out of it. And if somebody really gives you a lot of grief about it, not even grief, somebody said, once somebody said, that's really nice. I said, no, it's nothing. He said, no, that's really, really nice of you. And I said, well, the bottom line is, if a car jumps the curb and hits me, I want to have something nice to land on. The These kind of things are very, very important. They basically show a woman that you understand that there are fundamental differences between men and women. And we're talking to a conservative group now, so I don't have to apologize for this. There are fundamental differences between men and women. Uh, Young men out there, you've been told your whole lives that that you need to share and you need to be nice and you need to play nice and you can't point guns and you can't compete and you can't win, you can't keep score, you can't do any of this, you can't do anybody. No, no, you're built differently than women are. The fact of the matter is you're faster than they are, you're stronger than they are, much stronger. This is why I worry so much when I see women kicking butt in movies, because I think that women think that they can get into fights with men because they don't know any better. There's not a young man out there right now, not an 18 to 25, 30, 40-year-old man right now who couldn't have virtually any woman. I'll come out and say it. If you're a 25-year-old man, a 17-year-old boy, teenager man, becoming a man, 18-year-old man, whatever, you don't know a woman. You do not have in your personal company a woman who could hurt you by hitting you as hard as she could. I'll go right out there and say that. I bet you that's true for 99.999% of you young men out there. You don't know a woman your age or any other age for that matter who couldn't hit you as hard as she could. And look, if she hit you square in the nose, she might break your nose, right? But just generally speaking, she could hit you as hard as she wants to for as long as she wants to and do you essentially no damage. I'm talking about with fists. If she starts swinging a bat, that's another issue. Right? You hit a woman as hard as you could kill her. And you need to be aware of this fact and never forget it. This is part of what we talked about at the beginning of the show. This is what fathers teach their boys. You never, ever, 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 ever hit a woman. I've been slapped in the face by a woman once or twice. I've been hit in the face with a fist once. And that's just something you walk away from, because the fact of the matter is it's not like getting hit in the face by a man who hits you. Now look, a lot of people think this is chauvinism and so on and so forth. It's not. First of all, if you don't believe me, you might be surprised to do a little bit of research. You go out there and find out what the fastest woman in the 100-meter dash was at the 2012 Olympics. Go out there in the 2012 Olympics, find out what the fastest woman's time was, and I bet you'll find that there's a male sprinter in every college in America who's got a better time, and many high school sprinters have that time. You're faster than they are. You're stronger than they are. You need to act like it. That doesn't mean that they're worse than you. They're different. It's amazing to me how equal men and women actually are. Men generally have better vision. Women generally have better hearing. Men are more resistant to cold. Women are more resistant to heat. Men have greater physical strength. Women have greater physical endurance. Men can endure sharper pain for a long, but women can endure it for a long. Whatever. It all works out this way. But it's actually remarkably balanced. But here's the real thing, guys. Here's what I would tell you in terms of the psychology of all this. I mentioned if you're one of those people who are not cursed by being, drawn to the cheerleader type, your life is simple. If you are one of those people, your life is a lot more difficult. But there are some ways to actually fight this fight too. First thing you need to understand about women is we talk about what I just said about how much faster and stronger we are and all this other stuff. And we can think a lot more clearly because we think a lot more simply about things. Everything for women is connected to everything else. Here's something that was told to me not too long ago. It'll blow your mind if you're a man. If it's a woman, you're just going to sit there and go, what's the matter with these guys? Here's the thing, guys. Let's say you go to your prom, right? You walk into the room with your prom date, and you're going to have your date on your arm. You're going to walk into a room full of people. There's 200 people in there. You'll look at a friend. Hey, you'll nod at your friend. You'll think, hey, I'm proud of this girl I'm with. There's another friend of yours, and so on. And that's basically all you'll see because you're a man. But women, when they walk into the prom, will be able to look at every single person in that room, and they'll be able to tell what that woman feels about her date. They'll be able to tell what that woman feels about herself. They'll be able to tell what that woman feels about the other people around them. They'll be able to have a complete, absolute matrix network of infinite complexity, and they will see things that you will never, ever imagine, let alone see. You just won't even imagine. They'll look at a woman's shoes. They'll be able to determine what kind of mood she's in. They'll be able to determine her financial status. They'll be able to determine by the details on her nails how much she likes this guy. It's astonishing. You cannot play this game with them. They're going to win every time. That's why every woman always wins every argument, because if it looks like a man gets the last word, that's the beginning of a new argument. You just have to accept that. Your job as a male, as a man, rather, your job as a man in a romantic relationship is, listen carefully, I shouldn't give this away. All you girls, turn down your speakers here. This is fun to talk about. I much prefer this over politics. Here's the thing, guys. You can have bad days. You can have real bad days. You can have the kind of days where you're ready to put a gun in your mouth, but you can never, ever, ever, ever share that with your wife. No matter what they tell you, they'll tell you, oh, no, no, I want to know everything. No, 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 we're soulmates. No, 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 we're best friends. Listen to me on this one. You can never, ever share that kind of despair with a woman in your life. Don't ever do that. That's what your friends are for. You go out and talk to your friends, go out and have a drink or whatever. If you really feel like you are just like, I'm going to go under a bridge and put a needle in your arm, you need to have that conversation with your friends. And the reason I say that is because your job is to provide the source of security in a woman's life, their emotional security. Our brains are wired so differently. They worry about everything all the time. And they don't just worry about one thing, because if you're worried about the rent, they're worried about the rent, and they're worried about 100 things that are connected to the rent. Conservative families work because the men need to worry about the outside world. Because if you are perceived to do that, if your attitude, if your fundamental existence towards women is, sweetheart, I got this covered, don't worry, it's all right, I got it covered. If you can do that, you are king of the world, and you are never, ever, ever going to have a problem with a woman for the rest of your life. If you project, you don't have to say it. It's nice to say it. If your attitude is, and I'm talking to you now, if you're a 16-year-old kid, this is the opposite of swag. If you think that this is swag, you completely misunderstand this whole swagger thing. This is the exact polar opposite of swagger and attitude and all of that stuff. It's the exact opposite. This is a quiet, calm, very low-key, very, very strong and silent attitude. Even if you're 15 or 16 years old and you take a girl out on a date and you're just going to go buy her an ice cream cone, if you can just project, sweetheart, I got this covered, you don't have anything to worry about, you're golden. You're golden. And when you get married, that's your job, which is why if things really go south. Now, look, I'm not saying you hide your financial situation from your wife. You have to share everything. If things are going south financially, you share those details. But if you get to a place of despair where you're falling apart, you need to get out of there now, man, and you need to go find a good friend and have that conversation with him. I learned this lesson the hard way many times. And I'll tell you one more little secret, kid. Somebody just said, don't get cocky. Here's my Han Solo advice to you youngsters out there who are afflicted with this cheerleader disease, which I've got in epidemic proportions. Here's the trap that you're going to fall into if you're a young man and you're attracted to really good-looking women. You're going to do one of two things. You're either going to think that by being really nice to them that they're going to like you, and they will. And you bring them flowers, and you're going to offer to do their homework for them and all that other stuff. And then they're going to ask you to do their homework for them while they go out with their boyfriend, who never brings them flowers. So that kind of pursuit does not work on young, beautiful women. It's the kiss of death. Now, here's the problem. Many of you will make the same mistake that many of us have made, and you will assume that the alternative to being a lapdog is to be a D-bag. That's the softest word I could find for it. You're going to think that because they're going out with the tough guy or the kind of brainless, don't give a damn kind of guy, that the answer is to act like a jerk. And you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. The answer is not to act like a jerk. What the jerks that date the pretty girls have going for them is they don't really care. And there's a difference between being easy and being predictable and being a puppy dog and caring. You have to be able to, you have to care, but you have to seem as if you don't care. Now, that's different than aggressively being a jerk. What I'm really saying is especially if a pretty girl knows that you do anything to go out with her, it's over. You have to say, hey, I'd really like to go out with you. And then you have to let it sit. What I mean by let it sit is, if you ask her out and she says no, you just walk away from that for a while. Okay. And it's I've explained this before. The best way I can explain this is this. If you really want to date a pretty girl and you're a young man, and I was a young man and I was a dog guy my entire life. I had dogs as a kid. I loved dogs. What you're hoping for is a dog. You're hoping, and I don't mean this in a looks way or anything like that. What you're hoping for is you're hoping that if you treat them like a dog, in the best possible way, as if you're pet, then that's going to work. You give them all this enthusiasm, you get all excited, you rub them on the head, and you say, come here, and you get all excited, and you bring them toys. And no. If you want to date beautiful women, you really have to get a cat. Because if you get a cat, you're going to know how you have to handle, good-looking women or women who are playing hard to get. Because here's the thing about a cat, and this is what I learned over many years. It's true for cats, and it's true for really good-looking women, too. A cat will never come if you call it. You can't say, come here, cat, and that cat will never come. And if you chase a cat to pick it up, that cat's going to run away. And if you try and actually physically try to pick up a cat that doesn't want to get picked up, you're going to get your arms and your eyes scratched out. That's not how you deal with cats. That is not how you deal with cats. The way you deal with cats is you simply sit in the same room as a cat, and eventually a cat will be curious. And a cat will come along, and it will come within range, but it'll be very wary. And if you're very, very kind and very patient and move very, very slowly, you can sometimes just scratch a cat on the top of the head. Once you scratch a cat, the cat will walk away. And if you chase the cat will continue to run, and that's the end of that cat. You just scratch the cat on the back of the ears and do something that the cat likes, and then you sit there and wait. And then the cat will walk away, and then the cat will come back. And this time the cat trusts you a little more, so you get to scratch it on the back or whatever, and you get to rub its little ears and all that other stuff. And then the cat will be really fond of you, and that cat will want to be where you are. And no matter what room in the house you are in, the cat will follow you there. But if you ever chase the cat will run. They're not like dogs. You can't call them. You can't call them, and you cannot pursue them. You have to make yourself so attractive and so wonderful and be such a joy to be around that the cat walks towards you. That's the answer. I'm telling you, that's the answer. If you can make friends with a cat, then good-looking women are a piece of cake after that, because it's the exact same thing. You want to be attractive. You want to be confident. You want to be the kind of person that makes them feel good. And you want to make it clear that when they want to be with you, you want to be with them, but if you go chasing after them, that's different than confidence. But if you go chasing, hey, what you doing Thursday? I'm busy Thursday. Well, what about Friday? I'm busy Friday too. How's early next week look? It's over. You might as well just go home. Just forget about it. No. How's Thursday look? I'm busy Thursday. Okay. Got a counteroffer? If they say no, then you just walk away for a while. So anyway, some people say, no, all cats are like that. My cats were like that. I'm speaking metaphorically, but that has been my experience with working with getting to be friends with feral cats. And my experience has been that if you're dealing with a good-looking woman who's actually an actor of some kind, you're talking about feral cats. You're talking about very skittish people. And you know what? A lot of people give good-looking women a hard time about this, but I don't do that. Because if you're a really good-looking woman, you've basically been the subject of manipulation your entire life. You've had guys buttering you up and telling you how wonderful you are, and some people just stop there. That's all the personality they ever develop. But really, if you think about it, they've had nothing but people who they don't know saying, I love you, I can't live without you, and they say, you don't even know me. They're right. They're right. Oh, I can't. Oh, you mean so much to me. You don't even know me. It's an insult to them. Just be nice. Be confident. Act like you got this stuff covered, and don't push too hard. And you'd be amazed. You would be amazed. Last two questions are the three, and blindingly quick through them. What's your favorite piece of military hardware, past or present, and why? My favorite military hardware is the F-100 Super Sabre, which is one of the best-looking airplanes ever made. It's not the best-looking airplane. I think probably the F-16 is the best-looking airplane ever made. The P-51's got a lot on it. The Spitfire is a beautiful airplane. But the F-100 Super Sabre is important to me because that was what the Thunderbirds were flying when I saw them in 1964. And the F-100 Super Sabre looks like a muscle car. It looks like my Camaro. It's a big, solid, tough thing. It doesn't have that tremendous bubble canopy or the clean, sleek, elegant lines that the F-16 has, but the F-100 just looks like a muscle airplane. I think the F-16 is the best looking airplane ever made, but I think the F-100 is my personal favorite because I grew up on it. And there's something about the shape of that wing too. It's a real sharp delta wing, but it's got a little notch on the trailing edge. It's really kind of cool, and that elongated nose scoop, and the canopy's visibility is probably crap, but it's just real sleek. It's just a big, strong, muscular, tough-looking airplane. And I saw 6 of them in 1965, and that was the end of my life as I knew it prior to that. Dave Olson wants to know, number 1, science is about the gathering and analysis of evidence. Why are many scientists liberals when evidence refutes liberalism? Bert Rutan explained this to me. Scientists are primarily liberals, and conservatives, engineers are primarily conservative, because if you're a scientist and you're wrong, you learn something. If you're an engineer and you're wrong, people die. It's good to be wrong in science. Being wrong in science is much easier than being right. As a matter of fact, in order to prove yourself right in science, you never really do. You just have to consistently show that you're not wrong. And that's why I think liberals have so much hard time dealing with science. Even though they claim to be all about science, that just science is a replacement for religion for them. They don't really understand the rigors of science. And they certainly don't understand. Look, engineering is applied science, right? Engineering is science with consequences. And that's why so many engineers have to be right. That's why I think they're much more conservative than liberals. Anyway, that's question number 1 from Dave. Number 2, I would crawl over burning broken glass for the chance to vote for Alan West for president. Do you think he'll run? I talked about that earlier. He says he won't, but I think he might. I hope he does. And the final question, real reason I took the call, is Yeoman Rand or Lieutenant Uhura? Listen, Uhura was gorgeous, but Yeoman Rand occupied a significant portion of my teen years in a way that virtually anybody else didn't. Final question today is from Jennifer Kearns-Lechner, who says, I remember you saying once that you could explain the basics of aerodynamics in the space of about 5 hours. Is there any chance you might do that, perhaps as a mini course for a fee? Absolutely no fee. Why don't we do a flight show, maybe next week? We'll just do a show on airplanes, and I'll tell you about one of my other true loves and how that works and why it works, and be a fun thing to talk about. I'm going to go out and shoot some, get one of those little mini cameras, those super rugged cameras, and put it on an airplane, shoot some flight video. That'd be a lot of fun. Anyway, Dave Olson said an ad came up during his question. The only answer that really matters, Dave, is Rand and Rand by 100 yards. It's time to go home. It's almost 2 hours. I certainly owed you that after that long delay. I'm going to stay here in the fabulous Stratosphere Lounge and finish up the State of the Union on guns. I've got probably another hour or two's worth of work to do on that. And then we'll be back. I'm traveling a lot. I think I'm traveling 8 out of the 9 next weeks of my life, and then I really backed it off. So I'm going to keep trying to do a Stratosphere Lounge every week. It may be closer to the beginning or the end of the week if I'm in the middle, but I'm going to try and get it done. If it turns out that I don't, it's not because I don't care. The last 4 or 5 weeks that I missed were really tough on me and really hard, and I really apologize. Hey, look at this. You know what that is? That's Kirk looking at Janice Rand adjusting her hemline. Anyway, we'll be back with you as soon as we can. I expect to be back next week. And as always, thanks again for all your support and everything. We're going to start getting this virtual presidency thing up on its feet and really moving, and I got to get back to work on that. So once again, thanks for joining us, the Stratosphere Lounge. I think it's episode 25. I'll get it up on YouTube hopefully by tonight or tomorrow. And we'll see you later. Okay. Good night now. Bye-bye.